Hey, what's going on everybody? In this video we are going to create a responsive image gallery using HTML and CSS. We're going to be using CSS Grid for the layout. We're also going to be adding a fun little animated image hover effect, as you can see on the screen here. I'm going to go ahead and open up the developer tools and going to hit this device toolbar here. I have it set in this responsive tab here. So I'm going to go ahead and decrease the screen size, and as we do, we will have a change in the layout for medium-sized devices. And as we continue to decrease the size, it will go to a single column layout for the smallest device sizes. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to have a link in the description to the code if you want to check it out. It'll be on CodePen, and let's get started. So just jumping into it here, I have a folder I created just named Image Gallery, and we have an index and a styles CSS index HTML. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now if we look inside of our file folders here, I have these index HTML and the CSS open here. I'm going to go and close that. That's all we're going to need to open. And over here I have the image gallery pulled up, which is just nothing going on yet. So let's go ahead and start coding out the HTML, and then we'll jump into some CSS. So I'm going to give a div class of wrapper. This is going to keep the page centered and give it some padding so it's not touching the edge of the browser. And let's go ahead and let's give it a space. Let's give it another div. And this div is going to have a class of gallery. I'm going to be using BEM for this. If you're not familiar with BEM, I recommend just go searching it on Google or YouTube. If not, you can just follow along how I'm typing it out. Pretty simple to understand, and once you start typing in it, it's very useful. So it might look a little strange, but hopefully this doesn't throw you guys off of the tutorial here. I'm just going to say div class gallery item, and each one of these is going to have a modifier. We're going to call this gallery item 1. I'm going to back up a little bit. Hopefully, actually, I just don't want to make this code too big for you guys, or too small for whatever device you're viewing on. But it's also, I want to make sure you guys can see this appropriately. Inside of here, we're going to create a link. And we're just going to set a hash or a pound sign or whatever as the value there. And we're going to give this a class of gallery link. Inside of here, we are going to add a image. Now the images, I have the sources pulled off the screen here, so I will enter those here in just a second. So let's just go ahead and just add that in there. And the last thing we're going to need, we have those overlays, so we're going to give it a div class gallery overlay. And inside of those, we're going to just say span text. So we're just going to next copy those, and we're going to paste this 5 more times. So we should have 6 of these now. And if we scroll over, we should name these appropriately. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now I'm going to quickly paste in these image sources that we need here. So, one last thing. Actually, I am going to give these images let's go ahead and just select all of these images. There we go. I think that's all of them, right? Yep. I'm using just in Visual Studio Code, you can click Control-D and you can select whatever you have highlighted, all instances of that, or the next instance. Class is equal to gallery image. Cool. So that's what we're going to call that. Now we have that class of gallery image here. Now we're going to go ahead and paste in those image sources that I was discussing. So there we go, there's one. And I'm getting these images from Unsplash. You can go ahead and fill these with whatever images you want, or you could also just cruise over to the code pin that I put in the description and grab the same images that I have here. Up to you. Most images should work within these because of the way that they're going to be positioned inside of the parent container here. So, two. So now that we got all those images, let's go ahead and hit a refresh, make sure everything's showing up. Cool, so we have that panda, we have a lion, we have an elephant, we have this big old picture of a buck. We have a little fox, and we have some horses, and that is good there. So let's go ahead and continue on. Let's go back to the top. Let's go ahead and add the appropriate text for each one of these. So for this first one, we're just gonna say eating panda. So eating roaring lion, a elephant, a buck, and a elephants in a field. We say a little fox, and let's go ahead and say group of horses. And cool. So that's going to be all the HTML markup that we need. So let's go ahead and jump into the styles. Now, at the top, we're going to add a simple reset here. And matter of fact, I'm actually going to go here, target the before elements, and target the after elements. And we're going to say margin 0, padding 0, and I like to code everything in box sizing border box. I just find it more intuitive or easier to use. I think it's a better box model. I'm also in the index, I don't know if I mentioned here, but I have a Google, below the styles here, I have a link to Roboto font from Google. So I'm going to say body font family, and we are going to set this to Roboto and just give it a fallback of sans serif. You guys can set whatever font you guys want, or if you guys want to go get that, you can. And next, also going to set a background color that I have selected here. It's just a off-white color, and it's just ECF0F1. Cool, so let's go ahead and add a wrap. Let's go ahead and give the wrapper some spacing and everything. So we're going to say, for this we're going to say max width of 75 rem, say padding of 2 rem, and we're just going to say margin 0 auto, which will center it out. So next we are going to target the gallery, and we're going to be using the grid, CSS Grid for this. So we're going to say display grid, and we're going to be developing from desktop and moving our way down to the smaller screen sizes for this project. So on the desktop size, we're going to want grid template columns. We're going to put repeat, and we're going to have, repeat, and we're going to have 3 columns, and they're all going to be 1 fraction of that. And we are going to, so they're all the same size, and we're going to also do a grid template of rows, and we're going to set those to a repeat of 4 rows, and we're just going to set them to 12.5 rem, which is 200 pixels. And we're just going to add a gap of 0.5 rem. Cool. Let's go ahead and hit a refresh and see what we're looking at now. So we can't see it now, but we do have a grid going on, but we have all these images overlapping each other. Let's go ahead and target the gallery image real quick. So I'm just going to throw a comment and try to break these up in order here. We're going to say gallery, and since we're using BEM, I'm going to say image with 2 underscores, and I'm going to say width 100, height 100, and I'm also going to set this object fit to cover, which is very similar to how using like background size cover. So this is a way to target an image in the HTML and get these same kind of properties that we want for this. And there we go. Everything is fitting into our grid. Since we have 4 columns down, let's go ahead and inspect. And I'm going to put this below here, dock it below here so we can see. And I'm going to try to scale this up. Hopefully, I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see this too well, depending on what device you guys are watching this video on. But as we look through, we can go and collapse these images down. You can see as we hit grid, we have 3 columns, but as I go down, we have 4 rows. And we're not filling this up, but we will be. So these will automatically fill into one grid position if we do not set a size for them. So first thing we want to do here, or the next thing we want to do, is we're going to go ahead and position all these grid elements, or all these, gallery elements to fit into there. So we're just going to say gallery layout, I guess. And this is going to be the layout of the gallery here. So we're going to just start with number 1, and we're going to say item 1. And this modifying, this double dash is just a modifier to let us know that this is number 1. And each one of these have their own unique class, just using BEM. Hopefully this isn't confusing. If you're unfamiliar with it, you can just follow along. So the first one we want to do, we're going to give it a grid column so that we can define how many columns we want this to where we want it to start and how many columns we want it to go. And for this one, the first number we're going to give it is 1. So we just, if I inspect this again, the first column is going to be number 1. And then we can also give it a slash like this, and we're going to say span 1. So this first image is just going to be starting, if we're looking at this gallery here, it's starting from the very first position in the top left, and it's only going to span 1. So after we assign this, it's not going to actually change anything for this one because that is the default for that. And we're going to say grid row 1 span 1. So for this one, we don't technically, I don't even think need to add this, but we are going to add it because I think adding it's going to give more clarity to our code. So if that one's number 1, to get the second image, which is the roaring lion, to where the buck is here, we're gonna do a very similar thing, except for we don't want grid row to start on, we don't want the grid row to start on position 1, we want it to start on position 2. So if I hit a refresh, we are going to have the lion overlapping that now. So this is the first one, and this is the second image. So next, the third image, we want that third image to come over here and take up a good position of this. So let's go ahead and target that. Oh, we want it to take up, we want it to take up 2 height and 1 width. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll just copy this. Makes it easy just to copy because we're going to use the same thing. Now we want this one to start on column number 2, and we only want it to span 1, and we want this to start on row number 1 and span 2 columns. And this one will be the elephant, so let's go ahead and see what we got. Cool, looks good. So the next thing we want to do is we have this buck, and this one is going to stay where it is, but it's going to span 3 columns down. So it's going to be grid column 3 span 1, and we're going to say grid column 1 span 3. Let's go ahead and get a refresh there. Cool, so that is not looking correct. Oh, that's because I need to change this. There we go. So we're targeting 4. Yes, that's what we want there. And then for the next one, we want this. Let's go ahead and inspect here so we can look at the gallery. We want this one to take up these 4 positions here, and then we want these horses just to go below that buck there. So the little fox is the 5th position in our gallery. We will select position 5. Now this one is going to start from grid column 1. It's going to span 2 columns, and we're going to start at 1, 2, 3. So this grid row, we're going to start at 3, and we want that to span 2 columns as well, because there's 2, so it'll make a square in there. And if we hit a refresh, Looks great, and this horse is just kind of falling into place. But like I said, we can add the content we want here. We don't need to because it already falls into place, but I think it gives our code a little bit more clarity if we just go ahead and add it here. We're going to say grid column 3, span 1, grid row 3, span 1, and we actually want that to start on 4. There we go. So if we hit a refresh, nothing should change. And if I go and close this, we have the layout that we want. Let's go ahead and expand this. There we go, cool. So that's looking pretty good. As we expand it out, we're able to get a good look, and this is connected there, so I can't go full size. Let's go ahead and just pull that down. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. We're able to have the layout that we want. So next, let's go ahead and we'll work on these image hovers next, and then we will work on the responsive grid. So let's go ahead and paste this over there like that. Cool. So next, let's go ahead and start. Oh, I got a subscription there. Oh, cool. There we go. So let's continue on. The next thing we're going to need to do after this gallery layout and the gallery image that we have down here, let's go ahead and above this, since the gallery image is in the gallery link, let's go ahead and add the gallery link here. And let's go and look at our HTML so we can get more clarity. We have a gallery item, and then the gallery link is the next item in here. So we're going to target this gallery link to make sure that this fills correctly within the image here. And there's a few other things we're going to need to do. Or it fills over this image nicely. It fills into this nice grid position, sorry. So let's say gallery link. We're going to position this to the position relative. We'll say display block. We're going to say width 100% and height 100%. And with this over image layer this image animation that we're going to have with the image getting bigger that we've seen in the beginning of this video, we're going to say overflow hidden. Cool. So that looks great. Let's next create the gallery link overlay. So we want the gallery link overlay to be a position of absolute and fill this container completely. So we'll begin by typing gallery overlay. We'll target the class name of gallery overlay, and let's go and position this to absolute, and we'll just make sure that it's in the top 0, left 0. We might as well go bottom 0, left, and right 0, so that this will, being positioned absolute and having all of the sides positioned at 0, it will expand the entire width and height of this gallery link here. So the overlay, that's pretty much all we need to make sure that it overlaps it correctly. Now let's start off by giving it a background, and we will say RGBA. We'll set 0, 0, 0, and we'll set the opacity on this overlay to 0.4. Let's go ahead and refresh and see what we got here. And that does not look correct. Position absolute, top to bottom. Let's make sure that we have this laid out gallery. Oh, I do see an issue here. Let's make sure that all of these gallery link class names are created with a double underscore for our BIM. And there we go. So now these are all laying over the images properly. So when we hover the image, the image is gonna be darkened, and this is because we have this overlay RGBA color. So now we want to position the text that we have into here and centered into the middle of all of these. So what we'll use for this, we'll say display flex. We'll just go ahead and align item center and justify content center. Now we are going to add a line above and below this, and if we don't set the flex direction to column, then the lines are going to try to appear on the sides of the text. So we're going to go ahead and just set that, and let's go and refresh that. That should center out. There we go. So this, I don't know if you guys can see that too well, but the link text is now centered. Let's go ahead and give this link text some styles. So first we'll say font size 1.5 rem. We'll say color white. We'll give it a font weight. We're gonna go with a bold font weight. I'll just set to 700, and we'll also make these, we'll transform the text here to uppercase. Now if we save that, that should give us a nice little text. Cool. So our text is looking proper. Now let's go ahead and see what we need to handle next. So we want this to fade in, and if we just displayed this gallery overlay here, if we just set this to display none, and then when we hover we set it to display block, we can't transition that with CSS transition properties. So the way that we're going to attack this is we're just going to set the opacity to 0, and we're going to put a pointer events to none, and we'll just set the transition, and we're just going to set it to opacity, and we're just going to go 0.2 seconds, and we're going to go with the default easing on that. And then next we are going to say, when we hover this gallery link here, we want to show this gallery overlay. So let's go ahead and do that. All we got to do is set the opacity to 1. And that is it. So let's go ahead and refresh and see what we got going on here. Cool. So as I hover, all the text is coming up properly. So let's add these little lines above and below the text, which is going to be pretty fun as well. So we'll just go ahead and say, let's add a comment for, give it a section. So gallery overlay text. And for this, if we look in our index HTML, we have the text inside of a span. So let's just go ahead and target that span. So we're going to go gallery. Oh, don't spell things wrong like me, folks. That's how you get issues. Gallery overlays. We're going to target that span, and we're going to create before and after elements to create the border top and bottom on this and animate them. So we are going to make those positioned absolute. So if we set this to position relative, we'll be able to add those top and bottom and make it relative to the span element, so we can get the positioning that we want. And so we'll start by doing that. Gallery overlay span, and we're going to say before and for the line that on top, and we're going to do an after for the line on the bottom. And we'll start off by saying content empty string, so that we can create an element here in CSS that we can target. We'll set the position to absolute. We will give these a height of just 2 pixels. We're going to give it a width of 0, and we'll give it a background of white. And that's going to be it for now. Let's go ahead and refresh. And those are not showing up yet. Probably because we want to give it, well, content position. Oh yeah, we have width set at 0. Let's go with 100%. There we go. Cool. So we're getting those lines. We have top and bottom. Let's go ahead and position the before so that this one's positioned properly, and then we'll move on. Set position before to top 0, left 0. And we want to set the after, instead of top and left, we're going to say bottom 0, and we'll go right 0. The reason why I had set this to 0 is because we are going to animate it. And if I set that back to 0, we won't be able to see them, which is fine. And if I set this to 100%, we can see them, and then we will set it back to 0. So there we go. And one other thing we want to do is let's up this line height to like 3 rem and give it some space. So that looks good. So let's animate these little lines real quick. Let's set this to 0. What we're going to do is animate the width of them. So now that those are set to 0, let's just go ahead and say gallery link hover, because that is what we want to target for the hovering property anytime that the link is hovered. And we'll say gallery overlay span before, and we can also target the after here as well. And inside of here, we just want to say width 100%. Now, if we refresh that, it's not going to do anything, but they are showing up at 100%. So the last thing we want to do with this is we're going to set a, on this before and after here, we're just going to set a transition, and we're going to transition the width, and let's just say 0.3 seconds, and let's say ease, we're going to just ease out on that for easing. And if we refresh, now when we hover, the lines come in, which is kind of nice. But since the background's kind of fading in too, let's make this, what speed do we have the background fading in? So this background transition is 0.2 seconds. So how about we set a delay on this transition to 0.2 seconds. So after the overlay fades in, then we'll have that nice little transition. There we go. A little bit of a delay makes it look a lot cleaner. So that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and move on. So the next thing we're going to tackle is we want these images to kind of blur, and we also want them to expand when we hover over them to give it a little bit more of a hover effect. So let's go ahead and target the gallery image. Gallery image. We're going to say width 100%, height 100%. Make sure that, and, or wait, we already targeted this. Where did I put this? Gallery image. Yeah, let's go ahead and put this below. Yeah, let's put this below here because we have this gallery overlay, and then we have the overlay link. Just to keep them separate. Don't want this to be right in the middle of the overlay stuff. That wouldn't make much sense. So that works pretty good there. So what we're going to do is when we hover the gallery link, like we did before, we're going to add the hover. This time we're going to target the gallery image. Did I spell it right? Yes. The gallery image. And we're going to use a transform of scale 1.2 to target that. And up here on the gallery image, we should add a transition to transform, and we are going to do this at 0.5 seconds. We're going to do this at a half a second, so it's going to be kind of a slower transition. It's kind of nice, but I don't know if you guys can see this on the screen. One thing I am noticing here is it's kind of got, on some of these, it's kind of got a weird little glitch, like a 1 pixel little weird glitch, and that's because this transition is, it's not really coming from, it's coming from the default here, but it kind of gets a little weird if we don't actually set a value. So what we're going to do to offset this, we're just going to set an initial transition, and we'll just set this to 0.05. Just a slight transition, so if we refresh, everything's going to be a little bit bigger, but not by much. And then, I don't know if you guys could see that, but it definitely cleans up these overlays. That's just like a little bug that I've noticed when using transitions with the transform scale property. So that's just one little way I found to fix it. I'm not sure if there's a better way or not, but that's usually how I handle those. And we're also going to add a filter to blur this, and we're going to do, oops, not blur, and we're going to blur it at like 2 pixels. Let's go ahead and refresh this. Cool, so if you can see the background's blurring now, which looks nice, but it kind of blurs quick. We want to add that to the transition as well. So let's just go ahead and break this down. We're gonna have a transform, and we're also going to have a filter, 0.5 seconds. And so these transition at the same speed, it'll look nice. And there we go. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. You can kind of see it slowly fade into a blur as it zooms in and the lines are coming. So that's looking pretty good. I think that's it for the image hovering. Next, we just need to make this responsive and we'll be done. So we're going to want to target this at a, let's just say, well, before we do this, let's kind of figure out where we want to target this. this is already probably getting close to where we want, because this elephants in a field text, buck in the wild, some of this text is starting to get pretty close to the edge there. So if we pull this down, and let's go ahead and open up our developer tool so we can kind of see what size we're working with here. We're already, come on, oh, there we go. This text is already breaking here, so let's go ahead and pull it back here. And up here in this right hand corner, we'll be able to see what size we're at here. So that's getting pretty close, somewhere around there. Let's just say 960. Is everything good at 960 here? These all seem to fit. You know, this is just based off whatever text you have here. Yeah, I think that's going to be the highest we can go. Is probably 960. So I'm going to pop open a calculator. And let's go ahead and say 960 divided by 16. And that gives us 60 rem. So that's a pretty clean round number. So let's go ahead and use that. At media screen and max width of 60 rem, we are going to make some nice little adjustments. So one of the adjustments I know I want to do before we even get into anything is I'm going to want to shrink down the wrapper's padding here. So let's just target that first, wrapper padding. And I have it set at 1 initially, so let's set this to 2. And the next thing we are going to want to do is set the gallery. We want to keep the gallery rows because we're going to have the same rows, 4 rows, and the same heights. But let's go ahead and set the grid template columns, not rows, the columns, instead of repeat up here at the top, we have, let's go look, we have repeat 3. Let's go, yeah, we can just copy this, and we're just going to set this to 2 columns instead of 3, but we're going to leave the same amount of rows, so we won't need to adjust that. And if we set this to 2, this is going to throw off everything, but we can start correcting each one as we go. Yeah, so that just throws off everything, but let's just start targeting these. Let's go back up to here. Let's go ahead and grab this whole section here, and then we'll readjust all the positioning here. And gallery layout, there we go. And we're just gonna go ahead and paste this into here. And let's give it a little bit of padding here so that it's in line with everything else. So the layout that we are going to wanna do is we're going to do 2 little squares, or like 2 little ones next to 1 big one, and then we're going to do the reverse on the second row basically. So this first one, we basically wanted to take up the same amount, and the second one isn't going to change either, actually, I don't believe. No. The third one is going to be the same as well. The fourth one, this is where we're going to start making changes. So now that, since we only have 2 columns, this is actually going to go to these, this is actually going to go to the end here, and it's going to span 2 heights. So yeah, instead of having 3 columns like before where we had the buck over here on the right hand side, and matter of fact, if we look right here, instead of having the buck on the right hand side, this is going to expand to where these 2 are like this. And then this buck's going to be big right here, and these fox and the horses are going to be on the right here. So let's go ahead and, hopefully that makes sense. Let's go ahead and complete that. So we know we want this buck here to be positioned 1 now, and we want it to span 1 column. Yeah, so we just want it to be 1, but we want the grid row, we want it to start at the 3 and at 3. And we want it to span 2. And I think if we do that, everything else should fall in line. Or not quite. Oh yeah, we have these horses here. Okay, what did I do? Grid columns. We want it to start at 1, span 1, and then we want this grid row to start at 3 and span 2. And we want position 5 to start at grid column. Oh, here we go. Okay. We want position 5 here to start at position 3, or at position 2, and span 1. And we're going to want this the same thing down here, and we want this to span grid row start as position 1. Ah, there we go, perfect. There we go, perfect. So what I was getting, it can be a little bit confusing. It's something you just got to think about. So as we do this, we just got to think like each item, and as we lay them out. And we didn't really do a lot of changes here, and we don't need to repeat all the code, but just for descriptiveness of it, I think it's better just to add it here so we can see all of these and how they lay out properly. But let's go ahead and inspect this. This will make it a little easier to see what's going on. And we can actually undock this. And I'm going to pull this over here, give it some room, and we're going to hover. So as we were looking on our code here, we were trying to figure this out. So we know, looking at it, we have position 1, span 1, position 2, span 1, or position 1, span 1, and then this one we just have position 2, span 1, column. And then we did the same with the rows, and we got that figured out down here as well. So I think that's looking pretty good. Next thing we can do is let's go ahead and target the next breakpoint. Let's see where that's going to be. As we continue to shrink down, we probably want to break somewhere close to here. Yeah, let's see. Let's try to keep going. Let's inspect here and just kind of see what distance we're at. It's already, yeah, that's like all the way at the wall there. So let's say about 600. Let's open up our calculator and check what 600 is going to give us. Divided by 16. 37.5. Yeah, I think that'll work. We'll just use 37.5 as our next media breakpoint. And to do this, we can actually just say, I don't think we're going to adjust the wrapper at all. I think we just want to target this gallery. And I think we're just going to turn off the grid. We can just say display block. What's that going to do? That should just get everything lined up in a row. There we go. Which looks good. Nice. And next we could just say each of the gallery items, each gallery item, let's give it a margin of 0.5 rem. And this is going to look pretty good here. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. And so some of these images are a little taller than others. We still have the grid set on the height, I think. Or we're just saying height 100%. So I think we just want to next set a gallery link. Link. Let's just go ahead and give that a height. And to make these scale down easily, let's just give it a height, but let's use the width to target the height. So let's just say 80 view widths is the height we want to set for these. Cool, so that actually gives it a nice overlay here. All right, it gives it some nice space as we shrink these down. So I'm liking that. And I think a few other things we could probably do. Actually, let's go ahead and adjust this. So in here, I think this text might actually be a little big. Let's shrink this down. So what do we have this set at initially here? We're just about done. What did I set this text to? I think I set it on the overlay here. Let's just go ahead and go into, I'm just going to open this up. It's kind of hard to see what I'm doing. Let's go into the computed. And I have the font size set to, I think 1.5 rem. Yes, okay. Why am I having trouble figuring this out? I'm not sure. Let's just go ahead and look at our code. Gallery overlay. Ah, yes, 1.5 rem. So I think we're just going to copy this. I think in here we should just set this gallery overlay. Let's just get rid of everything and let's just kind of shrink it down. I think, oops, not 125. Once we get to this tablet size, we should definitely shrink it down a little bit. And we can actually probably bring this size in just a little bit more than, let's go ahead and see. Let's bring this over here and inspect. This is a lot of tediousness. Here we go. As we're shrinking down, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. And we can actually go a lot more than we did previously. Somewhere maybe closer. We did, what, 600 originally? Yeah, so I think we could even just change this down a little bit and get a little bit more room. I'm just going to adjust this to like 35. And then at the very end here, I think I'm just going to want to set the font size on mobile to, let's just set it to 1 rem. And I think that'll pretty much be it for this. Except for when we refresh, if you guys can see that, that is super annoying. I hate when we do that. And there's actually a really easy trick to eliminate this transitioning of CSS. So if we open this up, we can just go into our index.html, and here at the bottom, let's just add a script with a space in between, and that's actually just a quick little fix to so we don't have to worry about the little refresh on load. Cool. And now we're not getting that transition on load, and if we inspect, we can go ahead, let's go ahead and redock it to the side here, and let's go ahead and click this and see how it's working. It looks good. So it transitions nicely and transitions nicely there. Cool. And let's just go ahead and make sure our transitions all look good on hover. And I think that is pretty much going to do it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment. I'm going to, like I said in the beginning of the video, put this up on CodePen so you can grab that code and use it if you'd like. And yeah, feel free to like, subscribe if you enjoyed it, or not if you didn't. Either way. And hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.